Hello and welcome to the Eye on the U podcast, the Miami Herald's Miami Hurricanes podcast. I'm David Wilson, and I'm joined on the road by our Miami Hurricanes basketball beat writer, Michelle Kaufman. Michelle, how's it going?
It's going fine. I'm in Denver. I'm about to get on a plane to Kansas City. It's not the most direct route, but it was a very expensive plane ticket. Let me put it that way. And the Miami Herald, we had to do what we could to be able to be here to cover this great big game for all of you guys. So hopefully you'll appreciate these long layovers and flights through
On
Denver.
routes. Yeah, I heard that airport. Isn't that the airport that people like, they've got all the conspiracy theories about? Like there's all the it's like I've never been there. It's supposedly like a weird historical airport with all these symbols, but we are way off track already. We've got a lot of basketball to talk about.
Let's get on track.
The men and women both in the Sweet 16, one of only 14 schools in the country with both their men's and women's teams in the Sweet 16. Obviously, we got to talk about both. Let's start with the men because that's the team you're on your way to cover. We previewed their first round last week, and I got to say, it didn't exactly go the way I expected. They really struggled with Drake down to the end there. Definitely not the way we expected that game to go with Isaiah Wong and Taylor DeVries. Tucker DeVries, both kind of no-showing. Miami has to win with defense in the end. I thought that was a very encouraging sign. And then 2 days later, they blitzed Indiana. They obviously had to pull it out at the end. In the second half, it became a tighter game before they pulled away again. But they really blitzed them at the start of the game. One of the more impressive performances I think we saw across the country over the weekend. So now Houston on Friday night, in a lot of people's mind, the favorite here in this tournament. Michelle, let's start with a quick recap of last week. What encouraged you most about what we saw from Miami that maybe gives you confidence about what they could do this weekend against Houston?
Yeah. One of the things is that Norchad Omier played.
Yes,
when this tournament first started and we were on selection day, he arrived at selection day in a cart. And there was a lot of question whether he would even be able to play. So first of all, that was a big thing that he was able to play. I do not think they would be where they are today.
No, certainly not.
And neither does Coach L or anybody else, I don't think, if he had not played. So that was number one. And then, what was encouraging is how they came back. Isaiah Wong turned around from basically his worst game of the season, 1 of 10, to score 27 points in every imaginable way. And, Jordan Miller had an incredible game, and, Nigel Pack. I mean, all these guys that they started so strong against Indiana, and they really just used their speed. It was just their speed and athleticism is something that Indiana just had never dealt with. And, and even when they got close, they got close, but Miami pulled away again in the second half. And so, I just think that their speed, their athleticism, their cohesion, and now their confidence, they're feeling very confident having beaten Indiana.
Yeah.
But this will be a different kind of game. Houston, their defense is, Miami has been averaging 80 points, whatever. They scored 85 against Indiana. And Houston, I just looked it up. They're number 2 in scoring defense in the whole country, 56.6 points per game, 56.6. That's, 25 points less than what Miami averages, and 36.1% on field goal percentage and 27% on 3-point percentage. So, they're facing literally like the best defense in the country. Now, the one thing that Coach L talked to us yesterday about is that unlike Indiana and, Duke and Wake Forest and some of those teams that have big guys, he said that Houston is really kind of a mirror image physically.
Yeah, some very stylistic match, I would say, to Miami. Deep matchup, and a lot of guards. Size. Yeah.
3 guards, 3 really good guards, which is the same as Miami. A lot of good guards who can score a lot of points. And then they're very, very physical, and they're thicker. They're a little thicker than Miami, other than Norchad, who has the bulk. But it's going to be a team that looks a lot more like Miami and plays more like Miami, although at a much slower pace. They don't score 85 points a game, but they are definitely capable of scoring.
Yeah, to me, the two biggest takeaways from the weekend. One, as I mentioned, the defense at the end of the Drake game. I can't
Yeah.
remember a single moment this year where they won a game with defense. I don't know if that is something they can count on. Drake is obviously, a mid-major program, does not have the horses that Miami does. I don't know if that's something they can count on to win games, but it's basically the best they played defense at any point all season. My big concern with this team going into the tournament, as I said, I think they can beat anyone on any given night because of how good their offense is, but I think it's tough to win 6 games in a row when you have a mediocre defense, which is ultimately what theirs is, based on the body of work they have this season. That was obviously they're playing defense as well as they have at any point this year. They defended, I thought, Indiana very smartly, just throwing a whole bunch of bodies at Trace Jackson Davis. Jaden Hood-Schifino got his too, but they kind of dared everyone else to beat them and they couldn't. And that's the other big takeaway is Miami's really deep. We saw, obviously we knew going in you've got 3 all-conference guys and Isaiah Wong, Norchad Omier, once it was clear he's pretty much healthy. I'm sure he's still not quite 100%, but not noticeably dinged up anymore. And Jordan Miller, obviously. Then you got Nigel Pack, who was probably the single biggest reason they won the Drake game. Obviously, we know he got hot. He's been a little streaky, but coming on strong here. And then the emergence of Wooga Poplar, who looks like
Yes, and that is the question mark. That is a question mark. He only shot yesterday. He did shooting, but he did not practice fully yesterday. He fell on his tailbone
right
in the game, chasing a rebound. And that's a very painful.
Yes.
You could hear him groaning, through the microphone. That's a very painful injury. I think he's going to play once the lights come on and it's time for the Sweet 16. I think he's going to want to play, and he really is a critical player because it's going to be a very physical matchup. And Miami really doesn't have size, but Wooga has become one of the better defenders on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Bensley Joseph is also a very good defender. Both of those guys have really stepped up this year, especially in the final third of the season or whatever. Wooga and Bensley Joseph have both been really big, and Harlan Beverly has also stepped in here and there too. So the team is much deeper than it's been, but Wooga's availability is going to be very key to this game. Yeah,
you just touched down. So so you're not at practice today in Kansas City, but there was a report there that he was taking part in practice, I guess. So obviously a good sign. Like you said, he just shot Wednesday. Technically, this is his first full practice of the week. Obviously, also Miami's last real practice of the week. I'm sure they'll shoot around tomorrow morning or Friday morning before the game, but definitely a positive development. Yeah, he's blossomed. Like he's going to be the guy next year. It sure seems like. Obviously Isaiah Wong is going to be gone. I guess Nigel Pack could be back, but that's going to be in the way that it's kind of a lot of ways Wong and Pack driving the offense this year. It sure seems like it's going to be Wooga and Pack next year, with obviously Norchad as the big man again. Like it's a huge development, not just like I said for next year, but this year they go 5. Like their entire starting lineup is a threat offensively right now, and there's not a whole lot of teams in college basketball that can say that. That was the biggest difference, I think, with Indiana, who probably had the Trace Jackson Davis. Obviously Isaiah Wong was incredible, but Trace Jackson Davis at first team All-American, was maybe the second best player in the country this year behind Zach Edey. But the difference was Miami could go 5 deep and Indiana couldn't. It'll be a different test against Houston, who is, we mentioned, maybe the deepest team in the country, this side of Alabama. So it's a really fun match of styles. But again, Miami, their offense is so good. They've got so many different guys, right? Like Wong no-shows on Friday night to the point where he's not even in the lineup at the end of the game for long stretches of crunch time. And then 2 days later, he's the best player on the floor. So that's the luxury that Miami has right now.
Yeah, one thing that Coach L also pointed out yesterday is that their round of 32 games were their first game but in both tournaments last year and this year were similar.
Yes.
In that they beat Auburn, he said that the round of 32 round of 32 game, yes.
Round of 32, they kind of blitzed a team that was favored.
Yeah. What he was saying is how they got into the Sweet 16 was very similar both years. both years they had to play at Auburn, they had to play a team that had 2 NBA players,
Yes.
big guys, and they ended up using their speed and athleticism to slow them down, and they beat them by 18 points to get into the Sweet 16. This year, they also had, they had Trace Jackson Davis, they had, size. They ended up using their speed and athleticism to play better against a slow Indiana team, and they won by 16 points. So it's very, very similar, those two games. He said the difference is last year, when they got into the Sweet 16, their opponent was an 11th seed, Iowa State. And this year, their opponent is a number 1 seed.
Yeah, they've bet it up because they faced Kansas, obviously, in the Elite Eight. So it's like they're getting that matchup around ahead of time.
Right. He said then they faced Kansas, and, while they were ahead at halftime, they ended up losing to the number 1 seed, and that was the end of their run. This year, they're facing the number 1 seed 1 round earlier. So, it's a different path, but, the way they're playing and like the big thing is, how are they shooting? If Isaiah's on and Jordan Miller's on, both of them, and then you have Nigel Pack hitting threes, they're very, very hard to stop. Very hard to stop.
Yeah, if they play the way they played against Indiana, they can definitely knock off Houston. If they play the way they play against Drake, they can't win. Like they can't afford they need like 3 or 4 of their 5 starters to all be really good, which they got against Indiana, and they did not necessarily get against Drake. One last thing I want to talk about on the men's team. A lot of Jim Larranaga love this week.
Oh God.
Obviously very well deserved. He's obviously the best coach in this program's history. You've been in South Florida sports for a long time. Is he I've been thinking, is he on that Mount Rushmore of guys? Obviously a Final Four run, I think, would solidify that. But like I said, you've been around a lot of coaches down here. What makes him stand out compared to some of these other guys? He's maybe not quite in the Shula Spolster range, but I think he's not far off from some of the greats down here.
In some ways, some of the things he does are more impressive because he gets the most out of players who are not McDonald's All-Americans. The Miami Heat had the big 3. Jimmy Johnson, those teams had the most incredible recruits. They had the best talent in college football that went on to play. Half of those teams went on to play in the NFL. I'm not saying, I love Jimmy Johnson. He's an amazing coach and was an amazing coach. But what Jim Larranaga is doing all you have to do is look back at what he did with George Mason. He did that with George Mason. He went to the Final Four with George Mason. So he is now making Sweet 16s on a regular basis with a Miami team that still does not, even for all the love he's getting right now, they do not get all the top recruits. They do not get the McDonald's All-Americans. They don't get, they're getting the 2nd-tier players, and, they're getting the 3-star recruits. Once in a while, a 4-star. They're getting transfers. He's very, very good at the transfer portal. And
always has been. It's not just the NIL stuff. Yeah, it's not.
This is not an NIL thing. This has been going on since Shane Larkin, Angel Rodriguez, McClellan, Kenny Kaji. The list goes on and on. Trey McKinney Jones. The list goes on. So this is not even an NIL thing. This is just he really likes older players. He loves older players. He loves taking guys who have already played in college. They're over the jitters of college. They know how to play college basketball. And then he hones their skills. And he's really, really, he's such an amazing professor of basketball for reporters and for the players. And all the players say the same thing. They learn so much about the game of basketball from him, and everybody improves. I have watched this team now under him for 12 years, and you see the progression of Isaiah Wong 3 years ago and Isaiah Wong now. Wooga Poplar now, Wooga Poplar last year. Every single guy on that team improves. And, he just has a remarkable, he really knows the game, understands the game, is very good at tactics, and he knows how to get the best out of players and how to hide their weaknesses and spotlight their strengths. So that's where I think he's definitely one of the best, if not the best, based on the talent that he has and what he's done with it. I think he's done an incredible job.
Yeah,
And that's
Miami, I think, had what,
across the board of all sports.
125 win season ever before he got here, and they've got 5 now, including 2 in a row since the FBI investigation. That, if you throw out those 3 years, like, if they got to have like real teams for those 3 years, who knows
Yeah.
where his resume
No,
would
what
be
he's
right now.
done is, what he's done is remarkable. Absolutely incredible. Yes. Deserving of all the love and the kisses from Nigel Pack.
And I'm keeping you for too long, but we do need to talk about the women's team, because that
Yes.
obviously, probably the biggest win in program
That's the
history.
biggest surprise.
Yeah,
Yes.
probably the biggest win in program history, upsetting Indiana in Bloomington.
It's not probably, it is.
Yeah,
Drop the probably.
only the second ever trip to the Sweet 16, first ever for Katie Meier. And I mean, just like, what a thrilling game. That is, the women's tournament used to have the rep as being like, there was always like, are they really March Madness? I think that was a recent thing that they got to use that trademark too.
Right.
More and more upsets happening now in that tournament. It's the first time ever that 2 1 seeds are out on the first weekend of the tournament. And that is the Miami Indiana game was one of the games of March so far. No matter the tournament. And like I said, huge, like you said, the biggest win in program history.
Yes.
Katie Meier deserves this, right? She's put in, they've had so many close calls over the year. It's good to see them finally. It was a pretty glaring hole in her resume, but they obviously get a big one
this
there.
is a huge moment for her, huge moment for her team. To beat Indiana, the #1 seed on their floor. I mean, in the women's tournament, they still play, the top seeds they're on their home floor. That entire arena, that was like 15,000 people and, 14,000 and, 14,000.
999 were rooting for Indiana, and the one was Reggie Wayne.
There may have been 25 people rooting for Miami.
Including Reggie Wayne, who was in the building. Yeah.
But, I saw Reggie Wayne. But, that was an unbelievable, just an unbelievable upset in the way they did it. And the fact that Indiana came back in that game, and it looked like,
there were, I think, 3 times they tied it up in the last 3 minutes. Like,
yes.
That's a team that usually the lower
seconds.
Usually like the inferior team, quote unquote, folds in that, especially in the women's tournaments where you get to play, you're playing a road game. But Destiny Harden, I think, epitomized it all. What she goes 1 for 4 on free throws in the last minute there, but they go right to her and wins the effing game.
Yeah, she's amazing. She was the clutch player, against Louisville last year, So when she steps up, the thing is, when she plays well, she is just so brave and so courageous, and she's a clutch player. She can be a really clutch player. And, Haley Cavender showed that she's much more, that the fans were chanting stick to TikTok. When she was shooting her free throws, and she made her free throws and turned around and did that girl has, that woman has, ice in her veins. She's a killer. She's really,
hit a huge 3 down the stretch. That put Miami back up 5.
She is very, very competitive. She's a killer. And then Lola Pendande had an amazing game too. She had a really good game that game. And they all came together and they believed in themselves, and it was a great thing because this team, the season started on the eve of their first game of the season. They announced that Katie Meier was suspended for 3 games. And then at the eve of senior day, they announced the sanctions.
They're on probation.
And so it had been a very, very difficult year emotionally for Katie. Very difficult, because she has such a clean cut reputation. She has such a wonderful reputation around the country. And so this really hurt her in a bad way. And, that there was any stain at all on her program was very painful for her. And, so it was a really tough season for her. And it rubbed off on her players. And so for them to be able to win her first Sweet 16 ever, she's been there 18 years now. That was just incredible. And now let's talk about,
by the way, not even to mention, they came from, there's too much other stuff to talk about, but they rallied from 17 down in the second half of their first game. 17. So
their first game, they were down by 17 at halftime. So they came back from that. Then they beat Indiana. And now they're playing a Villanova team that has the #1 scorer in the entire country, Maddie Segrist. She averages 29.2 points a game. She's had 30 points multiple times, and she had a 50-point game against Seton Hall, 50 points. She's the leading scorer of all time, you know, for Villanova.
Yeah.
And she's broken every single record that there is. So, you know, she can score every which way. She's going to be really difficult to stop. I mean, she is the #1 scorer in the country. That's who they face.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously the bracket, anytime you knock out the #1 seed, the bracket opens up a little bit. Got to be a challenge, but you know, certainly have the chance now to make an even bigger run here. Before I let you go, just a win like that, you know, the women's program has been, you know, very, very solid for basically all of Katie Meier's tenure. A win like that, how does that change the outlook of this program going forward? And, you know, obviously this team seems like they're going to benefit from the NIL era, just like all these Miami teams are. And obviously Miami, even before that, is always a transfer hotspot. How does a run like this, Sweet 16, change the outlook, and how would potentially an even deeper run maybe into the Elite Eight or Final Four change this program's future?
You're talking about for the men or the women?
For the women.
For the women. Yeah. For the women, I mean, it is the one thing that was missing. It was really missing it was a glaring, you know, as much as everybody loves Katie and we all love her, she's amazing. But, you know, there was the other year that I think they could have made a run like this. She and the team suspended Bebe Williams, Raquana Williams. That was the team with Shanice Johnson and Bebe Williams were two of the best players in the country, both played in the WNBA. Shanice is now an assistant on this team. So I actually congratulated her yesterday because she's finally going to get her chance at the Sweet 16 that she really deserved before. But this is the one thing that was really missing from Katie's resume. And now she can say that she's got a Sweet 16. And, you know, I think that it will definitely help recruiting. The attention that the team has gotten this year from the media, partly because of the Cavender twins, let's face it. They have 3 million TikTok followers. They're getting a lot of attention. So people are watching their games. They're getting a lot of attention from the media. They're getting a lot of attention from fans. And I definitely think they're going to get a bump in recruiting. Absolutely. Next year. I think there will definitely be a bump starting next year in recruiting for them.
Yeah. I think it helped that game was a standalone on Monday night too, after the men were competing with the World Baseball Classic. But for the most part, I think most Miami fans were able to kind of really lock into that game. And, you know, the casual Miami fans who maybe only watch the tournament games for the women, like, that's probably the most exciting women's game they've ever watched. So
a lot of
other than maybe the one before. So
a lot based on the number of people who were retweeting my stuff and you know, reading the game story and everything. A lot of people were watching that game.
Yeah, so that's a big moment for the program. All right, Michelle, absolutely. I will let you get going. You got to finish up writing before you catch a flight to Kansas City. You can follow Michelle on Twitter at Kauf Sports. She's got your coverage from Kansas City this weekend. Hopefully a long weekend there out in the Midwest or the Great Plains. I don't know what they consider themselves. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. I'll obviously be tweeting and stuff from my couch. So thanks as always for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.
We'll talk to you next week. Bye.